Hello, this is Drantane 1400 and this is RWBY Volume 6 review. Overall, I really did enjoy this volume quite a lot. Two of the episodes being two of my favorite episodes within the entire series, and one of those two being probably my favorite episode in the entire series. That episode being episode 9, which featured Emerald and Jean's character development and growth. Two of my favorite characters in the entire series by far, Jean being number 1 and Emerald now because of this volume being number 2. What I really like about Jean and Emerald during this volume is that it really sets them up for some character arc and character growth in the future. And Emerald in particular, it sets her up for changing sides, which at this point we know is going to happen. The parts at Salem's castle are really from Emerald's perspective, and we really get to see her struggle within herself to see that, oh, does she really want all this? Why is she even here? What does she really want? So we really get to have her character grow and develop in this volume. Now, the question isn't whether or not Emerald will change sides. She definitely will. The questions are how she will change sides and what events will lead to her actually changing sides. Now, I have some ideas for this, but it will be shared in a future video. As for Jean, I really like how he started off really angry, which was carried on from the last couple volumes over Pierre's death, and how he finally came to terms with it and accepted her death. And then he actually learned from it that, like Pierre, he should do everything he can to really make a difference. She died trying to protect Beacon, and Jean should do everything he can in order to protect the relics and really stop Salem. Speaking of Salem, her story with Osmond, or Ozma as he was originally called, that's chapter 3 or episode 3 of this volume, is one of my favorite episodes this volume. It was amazingly done, and the whole episode could have been an entire series if they would have wanted to stretch it out, but they compacted it somehow and actually told the story quite well in that little bit of time span. Not only did this episode give a lot of history to Salem and Osmond and give a lot of lore of the world and the two brothers and all that stuff, and it did answer a lot of questions, but for every a question it answered, it seemed like 2 or 3 more questions I was asking myself, and I was entertained throughout this entire episode. This was probably, objectively speaking, the best episode in the entire series. It's not my favorite because I really enjoy character development and I really enjoy Jean and Emerald's characters. However, this was just a really well done episode, and I think overall everyone's going to enjoy this particular episode, and hopefully like me actually wish it was an entire series. The last thing I really thought was done well this volume was Cinder and Neil. More Cinder than Neil, but I enjoyed their fight. I thought it was the best fight this volume, and I really enjoyed how they took Cinder's character, who is very much an antagonist, very much a villain, and you really see her at the bottom during the beginning of her story arc this volume, and you kind of root for her during her fight with Neil, and you're rooting for her during her moments. It was a great thing that they actually were able to accomplish this with a villain. I know it's been done many times before, but I just thought it was well done this volume, particularly with Cinder, a character a lot of fans hate, but I really enjoyed this volume, and Cinder's definitely top 10, maybe even top 5 characters for me in the series of RWBY, just because of this volume in particular. Now, those are the things I really enjoyed about volume 6. This next set of things are things that I thought were good and bad, things that maybe I just felt neutral about. I'm not really sure how I feel about this next set of things. And the first one of them being is RWBY. Now, a good thing is that, oh, she got a mentor and she was able to learn from her mentor and get out of a situation because of her mentor. However, a bad thing is she did so many things at the end of the volume during the final fight that a main character during this portion of the story should have never been able to accomplish. Now, there's a lot of things I want to actually say about RWBY and how she's a good and a bad character at the same time, particularly because of this volume, but I'm going to wait for another video because otherwise this video would be way too long. The next thing in this, like, I guess, neutral category would have to be Crow. I really liked that he was struggling with learning that Osmond basically lied to him or kept stuff from him during his time of serving Osmond. And I really liked how they showed how much that affected him. However, what I don't like is that he was almost completely useless this volume. And there's a lot of things I could actually get into here, and I think just like RWBY, I'm going to have to discuss this in a different video. The next thing in this, like, neutral category would have to be the side plot involving them being trapped on the farm and having to really run away from those Grimm. I think their names are Apothecary. I probably am saying that wrong. However, I really like that, like, RWBY had character development during this, like, side plot, that she actually grew kind of as a character, and she had character development. She actually had a mentor during this part of the story. However, this part of the plot had no relevance on the overall structure of the plot of RWBY. It was almost like a wasted time frame, except for RWBY and Crow's, to a certain extent, character development / growth. The last thing in this neutral category would have to be the fights, with the exception, of course, of Cinder versus Neo, which I thought was the best fight this volume. The other fights, the ending ones and the opening fight, were admittingly fun to watch, especially if you didn't, like, wait a week to watch them. If you watched them all at once, they were much more enjoyable to watch overall. However, they were, for the most part, completely meaningless. And what do I mean by meaningless? Well, they didn't really carry on the plot of the story. They didn't really have too much to do with character development, except for a few fights here and there. It was kind of like a waste of a fight. It was a fight for seeing a fight, basically. The first half of Volume 3 is like this, and I really don't enjoy the first half of Volume 3. They were just fights to give you something to watch, to enjoy, without moving along the plot or character development or progression. They were kind of pointless. The story could go on without them. However, like I said, they were fun to watch. They were enjoyable. They did have some good character moments throughout the battles, throughout the fights, and not all of them were complete waste. Now, the things that I really didn't like about this volume at all in the slightest was Adam's death. He was such a wasted character. They could have done so much more with him. He had such an amazing potential with a good backstory, with maybe them redeeming him at the end or something like that. They could have done so much more with him. However, he seemed like so petty throughout this volume, really, and he became like a stalker. He became really pathetic, if you will. The only good thing about him is that he kind of looked cool when he was using his semblance and during his fight with Yang and Blake. So the last thing I'm going to say is that I didn't like the homosexual stuff between Yang and Blake, and that was involved with Jean's sister. As a Christian, I really don't like that kind of stuff. I can probably, if people want, to explain why in a different video. However, I personally don't like seeing that stuff, particularly in a show I really like. However, it's like not going to stop me from watching the show or anything like that. I'm definitely going to still watch the show. It's still my favorite show despite all this. But I'm entitled to my opinion, and I personally don't like that kind of stuff. And that's all I'm going to say for it on this particular video. The last thing I want to say is that from a Christian standpoint, I really like how they put in Jean's character development / growth of him accepting Pierre's death, and that actually motivating him to actually improve and get better. He gave up on his anger, and though it's not established that he has forgiven like Cinder and the others yet, he has released his anger, which is, from a Christian standpoint, a very good thing. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you in the next one. Bye.